A few years ago, a loved one came to me because her child was struggling with gender identity. Her child was entering puberty and was connecting with a different gender than what was assigned at birth. Pain became self-harm and even thoughts of suicide. My loved one quickly accessed every resource she could find for her child: local LGBTQ+ support groups, therapy, and eventually outpatient mental health care. In the process of connecting with resources and doing that parental thing of learning very fast some brand new skill to help your kid, my loved one learned a lot of things about trans youth that she never knew before. She learned that using the correct pronouns for her child's gender identity could be life-saving, as could having family support. This woman was a devoted, loving mother, and like most, she was doing what was necessary in order to keep her kids safe. She called me because she was having trouble with another family member who was not getting the pronouns and said some hurtful and, in this context, dangerous things to her kid. She asked me to come in and mediate a conversation. We prepped for this big, scary talk by focusing on everyone's shared love for the child. We knew all the family members loved this kid and wanted them to be safe, wanted them to thrive. The disagreement was about what strategies to use to get to that place of safety and thriving. Mom had done lots of research and was getting best practice-based professional help to get there. And the other family member was going on her own life experience and her gut feelings about the situation. When we all got in that room together, it was tense. Mom was scared, and the other family member was a little defensive. But when we started talking about how everyone loved this kid, some of the walls went down, and people started coming together and getting on the same page. In recent years, white Christian nationalists have begun telling their people that empathy is dangerous. On his Stronger Man Nation podcast, Washington State evangelical pastor Josh McPherson said that empathy, quote, needs to be struck from the Christian vocabulary. Empathy is dangerous, he said. Empathy is toxic. Now, whether or not a person is Christian, that statement is so very far from the biblical teachings of Jesus, whose gospel focused on welcome for the stranger, love for the neighbor, and care for the widow, the orphan, the prisoner, the sick, the poor. Not so coincidentally, right-wing politicians have also been bashing empathy. On Joe Rogan's podcast in 2020, Elon Musk called empathy, quote, the fundamental weakness of Western society. Now, when I first heard Christians arguing against empathy as a Christian concept, I have to admit to you, I laughed. It was so absurd. To follow a religion that is based on caring for the marginalized and then argue against connecting with our feelings because doing so might lead us to care about other people is truly a hot take. But such a blatant rejection of core principles is also a lead. You don't go hard against something so core to the faith unless it really threatens you. Empathy is powerful. Empathy is a tool that leads people away from propaganda that props up power abuses. Empathy leads us back to each other. Studies have shown that empathy is hardwired into us. It's a neurobiologically based skill, which means it's both innate and it's a skill that can be strengthened with practice. This is one of the reasons that the right is going so hard against empathy, because empathy is part of who we are as human beings, and therefore it's pretty difficult to eradicate. Although we can become less skillful at it or less inclined to pay attention to it when it shows up. The other reason they are going so hard against empathy is that when we as human beings feel empathy, we are moved to act to help other people. Empathy is hardwired in our brains, and it causes us to feel another person's pain, although to a lesser degree. And then it moves us to act to alleviate that pain. This evolutionary neurobiology exists because mutual aid helps our species survive. This evolutionary survival skill, however, it's about the collective, our survival together, rather than an individual or just the individuals in power. Empathy leads us back to the truth of our entanglement with one another. It leads us back to the truth that our survival depends on each other. It connects us to the reality that we rise and fall together. We survive as a species, as a larger whole of belonging. Back in that room with my loved ones, the mom shared why she was asking everyone in the family to use her kids' chosen pronouns. It helped her kid feel safer, feel seen, feel loved. I added in the best practice research that using a child's chosen pronouns reduces the likelihood of self-harm and suicide. Now here is where the other family member pushed back with a lot of feeling, saying the child cannot choose gender. Gender cannot change. It's static. There's nothing you can do about it. And that was not the surprising part. Many people don't know the complex biology of gender. Many people don't know that science has identified 72 genders in human beings, or that 1% to 2% of the human species is biologically intersex, which, by the way, is the same percentage of humanity that has red hair. So just think about that the next time you see a redhead. These are helpful things to know, especially when you're dealing with a kid who's struggling with gender identity, but most people don't know them, so I was not surprised that this family member didn't. The surprising part, though, was that when she was arguing with such emotion, with such high levels of feeling about how static gender is, how it cannot be changed, this older woman said, "Everyone wants to be a boy. I wanted to be a boy too when I was growing up." Oh. Okay. There is something else going on here. Suddenly, I had a new understanding of what was at stake. why this other family member was so activated and insistent about the rules of gender. She understood this child's struggles with gender at a personal level, and she had her own internal fight going on about gender rules. She had her own gender pain. She had wanted more access to gender expansion in her own life, and she now believed that she had to enforce gender rules because in a different time, she had had to follow those rules. When I learned this, I changed very quickly how I was talking about things in mediation. But something also changed for me internally. I softened. I felt less frustrated and disconnected. I felt more connected. I pulled closer. In the end of that mediation, we not only came to an agreement that centered the child's needs and safety, we also left with a deeper understanding of one another. We all came out of the conflict closer. Empathy is powerful. It strengthens our individual relationships, connecting us across difference. It empowers us to overcome stories about how we are different and how that divides us. It empowers us to overcome stories about hate. When we feel empathy for one another, we feel compassion for each other's pain. We feel each other's humanity, and in that feeling, we are moved to act, to help one another, to help ease the pain of this life. This is hardwired into us. It's a neurobiological species survival technique, but it's also a skill, and it's a skill that can be strengthened with practice. We get better at empathy by listening, by practicing switching viewpoints, by doing the mental exercise of living in another person's life, imagining what it would feel like or be like to have had that other person's experience. Author, professor, and social policy analyst Dr. Elizabeth Siegel, who has written 2 books about empathy, defines it as, quote, the ability to share the feelings of others, understand what those feelings may mean, and do so with enough self-reflection to remain emotionally balanced. That last part, with enough self-reflection to remain emotionally balanced, means that we engage with empathy with appropriate boundaries. That's the key to not losing ourselves in empathy, and it is the true strength of the tool. It means that if I am going to genuinely connect with your experience, I also know how to ground deeply in my own and not lose sight of it. Empathy fundamentally is not self-abandonment. It is remembering that self is just one piece of the larger whole. It is developing the capacity to switch to other pieces of the whole and still make it back to oneself in order to make good choices with the larger whole in perspective. Sometimes, like in Hannah's story, that means loving someone from afar. It means sending them love and peace, but maintaining safe boundaries. Sometimes, like in my story, it means drawing closer to someone who is struggling with their own pain, but is still willing to agree to boundaries of mutual respect. Always when we're engaging with empathy, Our work is to understand our own situation and to understand power differences. In Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, when he talks about, I am the member of the Politburo and I am the person in the labor camp, he says the Politburo person is full of power, is holding so much power in his hands. When we are moved to act based on our empathy in order to help other people who we connect with, to change the conditions of suffering, we have to remember where the power lies. Cultivating compassion is a powerful tool for healing and for change. It returns us to the truth of human existence, that we are entangled with one another and interdependent upon each other. We need each other to survive, and the truth is we're stronger together. Empathy has the power to overcome narratives of hatred. It reconnects us and strengthens our relationships across difference, which makes it a viable threat to authoritarians who would prefer us to remain divided and disempowered. But the truth of humanity is that we are entangled with one another, and all that is, and the natural tools of our biology, as well as our cultivated spiritual practice, will return us to that truth. We are Hannah at the bedside of her father and Hannah's brother in prison. We are the child struggling with their gender and the older mother insisting it is static from her own pain. We are the couple celebrating love here at church yesterday, and we are the loved ones gathering to grieve Jack's death today. We are the mayfly and the bullfrog, the politician and the person in detention. We are the federal agent and the mother weeping for her children. In this great sea of experience and compassion, may we make choices based in care and mutual aid, choices for health and well-being and survival of all. May we let go of hate and still hold boundaries. May we ground the truth of our mutuality in our own experience and then take action for the whole. Dear ones, we are powerful, we are wise, we are whole, and we are better together. Amen.